This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Brandon Andrus Green.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast Live. Anyone can say, I'll see you in court. The harder question is whether going to court is actually the smartest thing to do. Today, we're talking with John Anderson, a litigation attorney with 37 years of experience. John spent his first 4 years practicing with the biggest law firm in the state and spent the next 3 decades running his own litigation practice, John W. Anderson Jr. PC. So when it comes to knowing which battles are worth fighting, he's seen a few things. John, welcome.
Thanks, Brandon.
So how'd you get into litigation in the first place?
When you take those little cooter preference tests when you're 14 years old, it told me I should be a lawyer. So that was pretty easy. And then first year civil procedure, I really kind of liked it and decided that this was it's always kind of what I thought I would end up doing anyway. It's stuff in trial and, the stuff you see glamorous on TV, that kind of stuff. So.
And how did you decide to go from working with one of the biggest law firms in the state to actually going out on your own and starting your own practice?
I got really lucky. A good friend of mine who's also an attorney he went in-house at a place and had enough work to sort of feed me, and it just kind of worked out that I had enough to sort of start on my own, and lot fewer butts to kiss, and I like it better that way. So I just have to worry about me, not 48 partners or whatever. And,
Yeah, because you'd rather fight than kiss is what I'm understanding.
Well, the fighting thing, people, it's what I do every day. It's not who I am. I don't honestly like to fight. I'm really good at it, which is why I still do it. But I would much rather resolve things privately with people or settle cases, because usually when you fight, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And I think the biggest thing that people don't understand is it takes a lot of your mental and emotional energy. Being a litigant in a lawsuit, particularly ones that go years at a time, really takes it out of you. So there's a cost to it that doesn't even appear on, what my bill looks like or things like that. So I try as best I can to keep people out of court.
So I would think that after 37 years of watching legal disputes play out, you kind of have your preference of what you wish every client understood before they even decided to fight. And so I assume that emotional toll is kind of high on your list.
It is. And, I really like to sort of sit clients down when the whole thing starts and just let them know right up front what the downsides are, what the weaknesses and strengths of their case, so that there's no surprises. Things always happen. You don't really know your case until you talk to the other lawyer. But yeah, I like clients to sort of be eyes wide open going in, so that so they don't get mad at me. There are things I can control and things I can't. I can't control what the other side does. I can't control what judges do. I can only control what we do and how we respond to whatever somebody on the other side or what a judge does. And sometimes that's frustrating for people. I have so many clients wring their hands over, why would the other side do something so, ridiculous or hard to understand? And the sad thing is I have to have a conversation with them and say, look, if everybody behaved rationally and reasonably, I wouldn't have a job, and I'd be fine with it. I really would. People do things for reasons you can never even imagine. And I tell them all the time, you could guess 1,000 times and be wrong, or guess one time and be right. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because even if you figure out why they're doing it, you just have to respond to what they're doing.
And I know a lot of people hear the word settlement and think someone gave in. But what do people misunderstand about settling a case?
Well, settlement inevitably involves compromise. Nobody walks out of a settlement getting 100% of what they want. So, you have to give in order to get out of something. It's not something that where there's a winner or a loser. Usually both people walk out feeling, or both parties feeling like they lost because they didn't get everything they thought they were going to get, or they wanted, or they thought they were entitled to. But, you have to, this is big. You have to get your ego out of things nowadays. It's too expensive and too time consuming to be litigating principles, or, I hate that person. And so, and I have so many clients say, well, I'd rather pay you than pay that jerk. And that's fine. But if I let them do that, I'm not doing them any favors, because in the end, they could end up paying me and paying the other side. And that's not a good outcome for anybody. So, you have to understand the case, understand the weaknesses and the strengths, and then understand that, if to settle it, you got to give up something that you think you're entitled to, or that you're kind of set on. But I've never had a client come back to me years later and say, damn, I wish I wouldn't have settled. I have had clients say to me, we should have taken that offer or whatever.
Right.
When they get 2 years down the road and $50,000 in, legal fees. So settlement's important.
And have you ever had to tell someone, you know what, you may be right, you may even win, but I still don't think you should fight this?
Yes. I tell them, in fact, I've had a couple of cases like that in the last couple of months. One, like I had a client who hired somebody to do some concrete work, and he just walked off the job right in the middle of it, but then filed a lien on the property. And in order for her to get the lien off the property, we're going to have to go fight about it and spend, it's like a $4,000 lien. You have to spend $10,000 or $12,000 to get it off. And, and it's going to take a year to whatever. It's just not, it wasn't worth it. That happens quite more often than people would, and it's hard to tell a client, hey, the best outcome for you is to just bite the bullet and walk away, because that's not in most humans' nature. And it's really, it's not in my nature, but as you've said, I've done this 37 years. I've seen all kinds of good and bad outcomes. And if I feel like somebody needs to walk away or settle for some amount, I'll tell them right up.
What makes a situation go the other direction, where you may be telling somebody, no, this may actually be worth fighting?
It ends up being very case specific. It's pretty rare when I tell someone, yeah, let's go fight this, mostly again, because it's so expensive and so time consuming and emotionally and mentally draining. There are certain circumstances where something's being done that's sort of inordinately unfair, and the consequence to not doing anything will be almost as bad as the consequence to doing something. So in that situation, lock and load and let's go.
Well, what mistakes I'm curious to know, what mistakes do people make early in a dispute that could quietly destroy their leverage later?
This is going to sound trite, but not talking to a lawyer.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
There's a lot of people that will either, the worst thing they can do is just sort of stick their head in the sand and pretend like it didn't happen. I have people come to me all the time. Well, they've gotten served like a year and a half ago, and it was unpleasant. They didn't want to deal with it. Now they're coming to me wanting me to get rid of a default judgment or something like that. Or situations where there's a lawyer on the other side, and you could say or do something that could end up later on being, admissions against interest or something that could really sort of mess up your case. So the worst thing you can do is be penny wise and pound foolish. It's worth spending a couple $100 to talk to a lawyer and say, hey, here's what's going on. There's a lawyer on the other side. What should I do? And then let them tell you. I have people call me all the time and do that. And I usually just consult for free for like 15 minutes on the phone. And there's a lot of people I'll say, like they want to get out of their student loans or something. I'm like, you signed it, you need to pay it. There's no magic bullets for some things. I can do a lot, but I can't work miracles in some cases. So.
I like the phrase that you said, penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah, that happens a lot. There's a lot of people that are, I'll give you an example. I had a client that decided to draft his own contract for the sale of a auto dealership. And this is before ChatGPT. And he actually did a pretty good job. But instead of paying me like $500 or $600 to do it back then, he was going to save the money. Well, it ended up, he didn't put some provisions in that should have been in the event something goes south. And it cost him $80,000 in 3 years in court to get his money back out of the dealership that he put in. So that's something that could have saved him a lot of money just by not being too cheap at the outset.
And if someone gets a settlement offer, let's say tomorrow, what should they be asking or thinking about before they actually say yes or no?
Basically, it's cost benefit analysis. And again, you got to get your ego out of it, and you got to say, is it worth fighting over? I use the example all the time. Would you spend $10,000 to collect $3,000? Most people would say no, but then they get their ego involved and, well, that SOB owes me, whatever. And by God, and you can go down an expensive road that doesn't really help you. So you've got to look at what could be involved, what is involved, what you're getting, and what you're giving up, obviously. That's the biggest thing with any settlement is, as I said, it's compromise. You're having to give something up, a right, or money, or the right to recover a certain amount of money, something like that.
And if someone wants to talk with you about a dispute, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you and your law firm, John W. Anderson Jr.?
They can go to my website, which is jwajrpc.com, or they can call me, and the number's 918-747-0060, and I'll talk to them.
Thanks. John, I so appreciate you being on the show, and I wish you and the firm the best moving forward.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnptulsa.com. That's gnptulsa.com, or call 918-301-6356.